What is up, all of my beautiful freaking people? Welcome back to another episode of FML Talk. Today, we are diving straight into the divorce pool with Alexandra Eva-May. She is the best-selling author of the book, Her Awakening, and we are talking all about her story, how she got out of a verbally abusive marriage and is now thriving. So sit back, have a drink, and welcome to FML Talk.
Oh my God. Wait, how old was the other girl?
19. Can you believe that shit?
Hey, this is Gabrielle Stone.
Good book?
He did what? 48 hours?
What a dick.
Yeah, but have you seen all the photos on her Instagram?
And this is FML Talk.
Oh, no, she didn't.
Y'all know I love a good self-love cocktail and occasionally an actual cocktail. I have always notoriously hated the taste of alcohol and needed it disguised in a good mixology cocktail until I discovered Neft. Because Neft is a premium vodka in its purest form with non-GMO rye, it has a light taste full of character. Not only is Neft one of the best tasting vodkas I've ever had, it also comes in the cutest packaging I have ever seen. Their unbreakable barrel keeps it chilled for up to 6 hours, making it the perfect drink to take just about anywhere. Join me in adding a little actual cocktail into your self-love cocktail with Neft vodka. Cheers! So Alexandra Eva-May went from being stuck in a verbally abusive, toxic marriage and eventually was able to leave, filed for divorce, and fell into a very dark place. She has since pulled herself out of that place and is now fully fucking thriving. She has written a book that I know is going to help a lot of women who go through divorce and heartbreak and grieving relationships, and it's already got a lot of success under its belt. Her and I have a lot of similarities in our story, including some travel therapy. So I am excited to dive in, and without further ado, let's get into the interview. Alexandra Eva-May, welcome to FML Talk, girl.
Thanks for having me on. I'm super excited.
I'm super excited. When I heard about your story, I felt like there was so many similarities between the two of us and our journeys and what we've gone through and the ways that we've healed. So I cannot wait to dive in with you.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
So I guess take me back to the beginning and kind of tell everybody about your story and where it began.
So I think I've been split up. We've been divorced for like 5 years now at this point, but we were together from the age like early 20s, like probably, I don't know, 22. And we were together all the way up to 30. And we lived together for years, got married, the whole thing. And then like shortly after we got married, it kind of imploded and we ended up going separate ways. And then I went on this whole kind of like healing journey over the past, 4 or 5 years. And I've kind of landed here. And like, it was such a complicated split because we had so much history behind us. And like, we were together, like through all those like formative years of like your 20s, like I said, early 20s, it was like, we were kids kind of when we got together almost. And
how long were you guys together before you got married?
Oh God, we were like 7 years, I think.
Okay. So it was like a long relationship.
Yeah. And we had lived together for 3 years ahead of time. So it was like you were married, right? In a way.
Right.
Kind of.
Right.
Because so much stuff was like combined and we had even bought a house and everything. And so, yeah. And then when we got married, stuff started to kind of change within the relationship and the marriage. And I think I realized I needed to get out not before it's too late, but I felt like I wanted to start over like in my 30s versus waiting till I was 40 or 50.
What started to change when the marriage took place?
So he's a complicated guy, but
aren't they always?
Right. So he for the people listening, like the red flags were there. They were never directed at me. That's what I say. Like I wasn't the target until we got married. So like when we were dating, he could be really like a shit to his friends and family, like say like awful things to them. And I remember I always justified it in my head well, it's not me. It's okay. It's not me. Like that was such
Right.
a naive way to look at it. And I think when you are in those 20, like in your 20s, you're like less, aware, I think, or like less sure of yourself, less able to like maybe speak up when things are not right. But I kind of just was like, well, it's not me. I'm not the target. And then we got married and I became the target like pretty like quickly within the marriage in regards to like verbal attacks and verbal abuse essentially. And like it was so hard to make like sense of, to be honest, like when it was all happening. And it was so foreign to me. I'd never been treated like that from like an ex-boyfriend or from family or friends. So I just couldn't even make heads and tails of it. And that's why our marriage didn't last that long, because I couldn't deal with it.
Right. Well, and nor should you. So when the verbal abuse started, were you guys able to go to therapy? Were you speaking to him about like, why is this happening all of a sudden? What was being done about it?
So for years, even when we were dating, I would suggest to my ex to seek out therapy because he had issues with anxiety and like it could get really bad for him. But he just wouldn't go. And he would have excuses like, the idea of going to therapy makes me anxious. Like it was just like a cycle, like, and he wouldn't help himself. And then, so when this all was happening, like we split up one time, like before we split, but like we kind of like, I left the house and I stayed with my parents for a little bit. And during that time, like he didn't do anything, but we just kind of got back together and then it just like kept happening. And so I had told him like, this isn't okay. And like things need to change, but he just wouldn't change. He wouldn't do anything. And I sought out therapy, but he wasn't, willing to go himself. And then even when we separated, like when the marriage ended, I wasn't sure if it was over, but like I left and he had opportunity at that point to like change things or to go to therapy or something. And he never did. And I did so much reading, like I'm a big reader and a Googler. And like I found this book by Patricia Evans. It's called The Verbally Abusive Relationship. She's like one of the experts on this thing. And in her book, she said, if someone is an abuser, and in this context, like verbal abuse, couples therapy almost doesn't actually work necessarily because it's not a couple problem. It's a one person problem.
Oh, interesting. Right.
She said like in situations of abuse, they need really targeted kind of therapy by themselves. And if they're not willing to do that, it's not that likely that they might change for a bit, but it's hard to change.
Yeah. I mean, you can't force someone to take that step to help themselves. It's got to be their choice and done within. It's otherwise it won't work. And if it does, it's not going to work long term.
Oh yeah, like for sure. And I think like, I'm not going to speak to exactly what my ex went through growing up, but it was like such deep seated issues that had like occurred in his life that would have been really hard, I think, to unravel. Like I remember my mom said when we had split up and I was still going back and forth, do I go back? Do I like leave kind of thing? She said, well, like, I think she said, these aren't just like simple behaviors. Like you're having conflicts and these are behaviors that maybe could be addressed. She's like, these are like personality things that are like, you get
right. Like fundamental things that need to be addressed.
And she even said, she's like, and honestly, she's like, you don't need to be his like savior. She's like, you don't need to put yourself through that. She's like, you're still young. You deserve way more than that. You don't need to be like dragged along for the next 5-10 years. Well, he maybe figures it out and then maybe he doesn't. And I totally agree.
Looking back on it, because you said that the abuse didn't start until you guys got married and you said you saw forms of abuse with friends and family members. There was never any fights that you guys got into that crossed that line into abusive?
So because I witnessed how he could be when he was stressed out or when like he was in that conflict situation with someone else, I never spoke up. in our whole dating relationship. Like I didn't realize this until like after we split up and I've been healing, and I realized, oh my God, like look, who was I for those 8 years or 9 years or whatever it was. But I never spoke up when he did things like when I was like upset with him. I just sort of buried it because I never wanted to, I didn't realize it at the time, but I realize now I didn't want to be the target of the way he could be with people. So I just kind of buried it. I was always like a people pleaser. I was consistently his cheerleader. I was just like consistently happy because happy was safe. It's very unhealthy, but like I didn't feel the range of emotions with him because it wasn't safe. And so, yeah, I to be honest, now there was situations like where we got in a fight once and he threw a cell phone through a car window and broke the window. Like that's like, it wasn't, I think at the time you don't acknowledge that's abuse, but that was abusive. So things like that. So he didn't target, I guess, verbal abuse at me, but there was other situations where, it was definitely abusive that I saw, but
it was almost like walking on eggshells. Like, I don't want to trigger this person, how I've seen him with other people. So let's just stay quiet.
Exactly. 100%. And that was so hard to heal from, to be honest, after we split up. Like the divorce was hard enough, like the ending, it was kind of sudden and traumatic, but then also I had so much trauma that I didn't even know till even like, I would say a year or two ago, I was still having trauma triggers sometimes like in my romantic relationship I'm in now because of what had happened, even though I've done all this work.
Sure.
Yeah. So
I mean, there's times where in my current relationship where something will come up and Tay will look at me and be like, and we'll both recognize that it's happening. And he's like, he feels bad because he knows it's from my ex-husband. And that wasn't a thing for me until now. Like, for example, I have never been the type of girl who feels the need to look through phones ever. And even with my ex-husband, when I should have had that feeling, I didn't have that feeling and never did. And now after the divorce, earlier on in mine and Tay's relationship, I felt that need. And it made me feel so gross in my own skin. I felt so ashamed that I wanted to do that. And I was open with him about it and spoke with him about it. And the way that we kind of navigated it together is he was like, anytime I was sitting next to him and he could kind of feel my eyes on his phone, he would just tilt it towards me and be like, here, but without, and he would always say, like, if you ever want to go through my phone, you're more than welcome to. But even that felt shitty to me because I didn't want to have to feel that need. So I totally understand what you're saying as far as like the past traumas from those relationships trickle over.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing though, that you said like, that's such a safety net he's created. That's so cool. Yeah. That he offered that up. But like we'd get in conflicts as you do in a relationship that's totally healthy. But it was stuff like I couldn't, as soon as a conflict, it would I would go like trauma very much is fight, flight, or freeze, like trauma response when you're in that trauma mode. And I taught, like I've done a lot of research and I've learned from experts and things like that. You go into almost like a caveman brain, like you're red. It's like red is flashing. So you either fight back, you flight, you go away, or you freeze and you shut down. So for me, like as soon as I would have a conflict with a romantic relationship with a man, because that's when it happened. And I didn't even know that this was a trigger till it started happening with this relationship, because it was my kind of the most serious relationship I've had since my split. Anyways, we get in this conflict and I would do things like I would look down at the ground, like I couldn't even look him in the eyes. I would get super silent. And if it at all, if I felt and it would be things like, maybe I forgot, or he forgot to go to the store, such a little disagreement or something. And then I would even have the need to go to the bathroom or my closet and shut the door and isolate, flight, get away. Right. And it was my stress just shot through the roof, and I had no idea what was going on, why this was happening. And it took therapy to be like, oh, well, you have trauma. That when you used to get, when there was conflict, when you saw it with the guy you were with, really bad things would happen. So now you connect that with conflict with relationships. So I've like, there's lots of strategies. And with my current partner, like I'll say like, if stuff is getting like, I'll be like, I need a break. And he totally respects that. And we just like kind of walk away, can like collect myself and like remind myself you're safe. Like he's not the same. He's not your ex. He's not going to do something bad to you. Like you're safe. And that really helps.
Yeah, absolutely. When the divorce happened, you said it was sudden. Was that your choice to leave the marriage?
Yeah. So it was after another kind of episode and I just couldn't handle it. And I just in the heat at the moment, I was like, I'm out of here. I want a divorce. I can't handle this anymore. And I like took a bag and I, with not even with full, like I'm leaving. Like it was just like that moment where I needed to feel safe. And for me, safety in that moment was flying away, like getting out of there. Yeah. So I left and then I kind of had intention of like returning to the marriage and we had talks after, but it wasn't as direct, like the verbal abuse after, but there was still so much, like there was stuff that was still, he'd say stuff like, he was trying to get us back together. And at the same time, he was like insulting me kind of thing. And he was still like sarcastic and passive aggressive. And I just like, you know what, like this is the time where a guy would be like, showing up with the flowers or like, saying like, I'm working on it and I'm doing all these wonderful things or like, yeah. And even when he was trying his best, it was still not good. So I just never we had talks, but I just like never kind of went back. So it was sudden. But yeah, I just never returned because it wasn't ever safe after.
Yeah. Do you think he wanted the marriage to continue?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like yeah, definitely. Because, we had, like I said, we had been together for so long and like the thing with abuse, it's very complicated. So like a lot of times people like, and I was never, I want to say that like I was never physically hit or physically abused or any of that. I do want to say that, but like in situations of abuse, whether it's physical or verbal, people always say like, why didn't she leave? And unless you've kind of been there, it's really complicated to totally understand. Like, even if you don't have kids, because a lot of times you won't leave because of children or financial, like you have nowhere to go, you have no means of making money. But like abusers aren't monsters. That's a thing that a lot of people forget. It's not just like black and white. So like they do awful things, but then there's all these times where they're okay. Like, and like he was my best friend. He was like the funniest guy. He was charming. Like we had he was so smart. Like I had so many amazing times with him, but then I also had these really bad times. So it like, even after the fact, like I think he of course wanted us to be together because I was his best friend and we had all these amazing times. And for him, because of his, like where this came from, this wasn't that strange. Like for him, this is how he, I think, understood that relationships, that this was part of relationships, was speaking to people this way.
Yeah, he had normalized it in his own brain.
100%.
So once you left and got the divorce, what did you decide to do next? Because obviously there is a lot of, like, take me through how you were feeling and the emotions that you went through and kind of what took place once you decided to make that decision.
So once I was done and I realized, okay, we need to be split up, like it's healthier for me. Then there was just like so much healing to do in regards to like the end of the marriage and then all like the stuff I went through. And I kind of want to tell anybody who is experiencing abuse right now, whatever form that is in your marriage or your relationship or wherever you're at, I know it can feel impossible to end it and to be out of it, but it's just so much better on the other side. Like even I remember referencing my mom a couple of times, but she said, it's not likely you're going to be single, but even if you are, like, that's such a better existence being by yourself for the rest of your life than being with someone who like treats you like that.
Yes, mom. Yes.
Right. Yes, mom. And so I completely agreed. And so when kind of that was like the ticket to like be like, okay, like now we got to start healing. And so like healing for me is, well, like there's so many different like steps to it. And I think that the summer after, so like the year, like I had no money to, like we had this house that we had to sell and we had bought the house at the height of the market and then we were selling it at the bottom of the market. So I lost like so much money on the house. And he also owed me a ton of money from like our being to like rent over the years. It's just crazy. Like I was like, not just like $0. I was well below, I had no money. So I like moved back in with my parents into their like base, into my childhood bedroom.
I feel like that's the norm when we get divorced. Like I left my house and went back to my mom's in my childhood bedroom and was like, okay, cool, here we go.
Right? It was the weirdest moment. Like, oh my God. Like I remember being here when I was 10 years old and I'm back, I'm 30 and I'm sitting here. So I was back in my childhood bedroom and I just kind of, I don't know, from there, I worked through a lot of my stuff, like with therapy and then blogging. Like my online adventure really helped with healing. And then I ended up traveling a ton too. The summer after I went to, the summer after I went to Spain and Portugal and Greece. And then the following summer I went to South America. I climbed Machu Picchu, like the 4-day climb, the Inca Trail.
Oh, amazing.
I went to Bolivia. So I was in Peru, Bolivia. So I did a bunch of travel after too. And that was so healing, as you know.
Yes. Highly recommend travel for the soul.
Yeah.
But when we had spoke earlier, you mentioned that you were really depressed after and that there was some really scary thoughts that you were experiencing. Can you kind of take me through what was going on with you in that respect?
So leading up to this, but I had different people commenting on how skinny I was getting. And I was in such a bad like mental space because of what was going on. I thought these were compliments. So after the split, I remember my sister saying something like you're really skinny. And I was like, yeah, I know. Like, thank you. And she's like, no, I don't mean that as a compliment. And I was like, oh, so it kind of like, okay. And I started to look at photos like I am actually like dangerously thin. And then I also realized like, during that time, there was all these things that were happening with my mind. Like, so I was having trouble focusing at work. I wasn't eating skinny there. I wasn't eating much. I could like on weekends, I would it just felt like overwhelming even to like have it, like get out of bed and have a shower, like simple things like that. My emotions were all over the place. Like I was lashing out at friends. I was isolating so it all kind of combined and I realized, and through therapy, like I had a deep, dark depression and it was because of how traumatic the split was. And because of all the trauma I had sustained, like it was bad. And then I was also at that time, so I had moved back with my parents, but then I ended up going back to the house. So I was in the house that we were trying to sell, like in this big, like lonely house, like a single family home with like 3 bedrooms kind of thing. Like the home we bought, like thinking we'd have kids there. So I'd have all these like nights alone in the house. And it was all the way, like in the city I live in, we have like suburbs. So it was like all the way in the suburbs and all my friends were downtown. So on those nights, like I'm like on the outskirts of the city alone in this big house. And what do we do to like cope? I'm not saying all of us, but lots of girls, like we drink, right? We have wine, right? That's our thing. We're going to cope with wine and it's cool. And like, I still like, we'll have wine and stuff, but like, it wasn't good coping. Let's just say that like one glass turned into 2, it's turned into a bottle, it's turned into like multiple bottles by myself on like a Wednesday night in this lonely house. And like, and when that would happen, like that's like, and so to go with like all my mental health stuff, like I started to get suicidal ideation like daily. And when I would drink like alone, that's when it would get to be really bad. And so I even had a plan. Like I never did anything to self-harm, thank goodness. But like
so you had a full-on plan of like, if I go through with this is what it's going to be.
Like my plan was pills. And I was just like, I remember I would be like drinking and I would like empty the pill bottles and I had to like remind myself, no, like your sister will miss you or your mom. Like, how could you hurt her like that? So like, I'd have to remind myself actively, like, don't do it. But I remember during that time, like reading my journal, I write statements like, I just want to melt into the ground, like crazy things. And I don't want to say
that's not crazy things though. Well, no, but that's not even that out there. Like a lot of people feel that way, especially when we're recovering from abuse, recovering from a failed marriage that we had all of these thoughts and ideas and promises for, that's very much so normal for people to feel that way. And I think the more we can speak about that and tell people that that's normal and that that's okay, that it kind of destigmatizes why people don't speak up to go get help, because they're, you know, they need to know that it's not that wild of a thought to have. Especially when you're going through what you went through.
Yeah. And like, I include it in my book. I did, like, there's a whole chapter about it. And I include like about the suicidal ideation, because it's like exactly what you said. Like, it was when I was dealing with this, and this was, like I said, 4 or 5 years ago. So now mental health, we talk about it a lot more. It's a lot more normalized. Back then, like, there was no, it gets better. There was no hats on for mental health. That didn't exist back then. And that's only 4 or 5 years ago. So I didn't know anybody in my life like that was dealing with mental health, or at least nobody was talking about it. I didn't even really know anybody going through a divorce, to be honest. That was like my age. So I just felt so isolated. So, so then I took to online, to be honest. Like, I think 5 or 6 months later, it was like Boxing Day, and I started an Instagram account, like a separate one. And I just, cause I needed to connect with people. And then I started connecting with people. And that's where I started to talk about mental health and divorce, because I felt so much shame and stigma on myself. And I wanted to, like you said, break down the shame or stigma that people might feel. Because with mental health too, like, even with all my knowledge and the fact that I'm so out there, like, sometimes things will come up, especially with the trauma. And I would say a year and a half ago, like, things were coming up quite a lot. And I felt ashamed that things were even coming up then, even with all my knowledge. Right. And so even when you do know that like others have suffered, like especially with like suicidal ideation, sometimes even though you know, like, it's okay, people say it's okay, you still get in your head, you're like, it's not okay, I can't tell anybody.
Right.
So, like, I've called helplines, or texted them, I've called them. There's no shame, but it can be very difficult to open up about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because you don't know
100%.
Yeah, you don't know how people react, and a lot of people, and I know like women suffer, we do suffer, but men, I think I don't know what the percent of men that die by suicide, but it's at an alarming number of men that die by suicide every year. And I think they've been raised to believe, like, you know, suck it up, tough guys don't cry, like that kind of thing. So I think men, especially, they get so like, I'm not going to talk about it, I'm not going to tell anybody. Right. But also women, but it's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a human experience to feel a certain type of shame around that. And I think the shame really comes from fear, because it's a very scary thing to recognize within yourself. So how did you decide to go traveling after that? And is that how you kind of pulled yourself out of that dark, dark place?
So I think eventually I realized the thoughts of suicide. It wasn't that I wanted to die. Well, I mean, I believed it at the time, but it was more, I realized I just needed to get away from the pain. That's where my head went. This will end my pain, kind of thing. And so I think realizing that sort of helped. Realizing how bad it had gotten for me helped me realize, okay, things need to shift. And I also started to like spend a lot of time with good girlfriends, and I started to open up. That was like such a turning point, opening up to my sister, opening up to my best friend about like what I had been dealing with for the last like 9 months or a year. Yeah. And then kind of opening up online. That's kind of when the healing started. And then I've traveled, like I've been, even before this all happened, I had been to, I think 15 or 16 countries. Like I've traveled a ton in my life. So I knew how amazing travel is. So right. You know what? I need to go travel. I need to do this. I've never really traveled with my sister. I've never traveled by myself. I'm going to go and do the thing. And it so helps, like traveling. It just kind of put everything into perspective. It got you out of your little world of pain and be like, there's a big wide world out there. And it just, travel is amazing. So yeah, that really helped kind of bring me back to myself. And then after I got back from my trip, I moved in with my best friend, and that like so helped. Moved downtown with her. It was just so great, and just kind of slowly put my kind of everything back together. I started going to the gym a ton. I'm not saying you need to go to the gym and get fit, but it's just like exercise makes you happier, releases endorphins. Yeah. So any kind of action, right?
Yeah. It's about finding the things that are going to like give you fulfillment and make you happy and make you physically feel better. One step at a time, so that you can put all those pieces back together, because it's like your entire life got upheaved, you know, like the whole trajectory that you thought you were on is suddenly now completely different. And you're single when you're 30, which is not a terrible thing, first of all, but it's a big change from being in a fucking marriage. You know, that's a big change. So when did you have the idea to write your book?
So I have been, like I mentioned a little bit here, I've been showing up online for 4 or 5 years on like through Instagram and my blog. And I had been writing quite a bit on the blog, and I had someone that said, hey, like, you know, why don't you should write up like a book maybe. I thought, okay. And that kind of, I guess, planted the seed. And then the reason I wrote this book was because I had, when it all went down back in 2016, I think it was, I tried to find a book that was like a first person perspective of someone who had been through the shit and how to heal from divorce, like a woman. And it was really hard to find. Like there was a lot of books from like psychologists and coaches and things like that. And that's great. And that helped me. But I had a real hard time finding that like first person, how did I heal book? And so that's at the time, at least. And so that's kind of why I wrote that. And I mean, your book is amazing. Like your book.
Well, yeah, but girl, mine didn't come out till 2019. Exactly, so right? We were going through whatever was going on in the fucking stars and sky in 2016 and 2017 with some fucked up shit. Let me just say that.
Yeah. So like, I don't know about you. Could you find a book that was like,
I know. And even to this day, when people are like, you know, they finish Eat, Pray, FML and they're like, I need something else that's this style of writing and that, you know, has like these elements. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I have nothing. Like I have books that, you know, I always recommend to people, Donald Miller's Scary Close. But that's by no means, obviously it's written by a man, and it's more about relationships and existing in relationships and how to have healthier ones. It's by no means about like, you know, a female and divorce and that perspective.
Yeah. So that's kind of what inspired it. So I decided, you know, I'm going to write this about my experience. I'm going to include like about my grief, my loneliness, my self-care, all the things that you would need. And then also like my mental health struggle. Like I have a whole chapter about like my descent into depression and what that was like and how I got out of that. So I decided my book is going to be like my experience, my story, but then throughout there's like all sorts of like strategy. Okay, you're grieving or you're lonely. Here's what you could do. Like, here's what helped me.
Right.
This is what you could do. So I really kind of wanted to mix between my story and also not self-helpy, but like practical strategies of like what you could do if you can't forgive. Let's say like there's a whole chapter on like, how do I forgive him, myself? Because a lot of people can't forgive themselves. Like, how do I do that? So I talk about my experience with that and like things that help me kind of thing. And
like tools for all of the different fucking shitty emotions that come along with dealing with traumatic experiences like that.
100%. And so, that's kind of what inspired me to write it and get it out there, because I want women to like, I want to help women like that. And I mean, men could read this too, but it's from a female perspective. It's definitely the female kind of experience. And I also kind of just wanted to like share my journey also of like just getting to that place of like self-love and self-acceptance, no matter what the fuck is going on in your life.
Right. Because that's like, for me, at least when I was going on my Eat, Pray, FML journey, it was like this fucking mythical thing of like, you need to learn how to love yourself. I was like, okay, cool. Well, can anyone tell me how to do that? Like, are there instructions that I'm not getting somewhere? Because I understood that it was the fucking key to happiness and the key to life, but I had no idea how to accomplish that feeling. And anytime I looked in a mirror and was like, I love you, Gabrielle, I felt like a fucking crazy person. It was like, there has to be something more to this than this. So I think it's so important, the more people, you know, write books on stuff like this. Like, it's because so many women go through it. And, you know, like you said, I have a good amount of male readers because I think grief and heartbreak is universal.
Oh yeah.
So if you can get past, like, you know, for my example, the pink cover, like, you know, you'll get a lot out of it because you're going to go on the journey with me and heal with me. And I'm sure yours is the same way.
Yeah.
So tell everyone what the book is called.
Yeah.
I know it's had some awesome success recently.
Thanks. Yeah. And I just wanted to add, like you said about self-love, like I've said that lately, like self-love, that's literally your life's work. If anything is, that's your life's work because it's so challenging. And when you get to this level of self-love, something else could happen that will like bring you back down. Like, and you're like, I just had a baby. So my body has like totally changed. And that really like hit me hard. So I have to use all these tools I've learned, like how to, okay, no, it's okay. It's fine. It's fine. And anyways, so my book is called Her Awakening. One woman's journey to heal.
Great title.
After divorce. Yeah, I've got it here. Yeah.
I love it. Wait, hold it up higher. Hold it up higher. Yes, it's beautiful. Is that you on the cover?
Yes. No, it's not.
I love it. It's beautiful, girl.
Thank you. Yeah. So you can find it on Amazon right now, and it should be chapters Indigo, Barnes and Noble soon. Apparently it takes a while. Once you upload it, it takes a while to like hit the shelves there. So it'll be there soon. Yeah. But yeah.
Oh my God, that's so exciting. Okay, sorry. This is just a side note tangent that I'm interested in. Did you publish with a publisher or self-publish?
Kind of middle of the road. So I was going to self-publish for a long time. And that was kind of like, I had talked to a few other friends that had self-published. All right, I'm going to do this. I knew how to like go about, but then just the universe kind of brought a boutique publisher into my sphere through kind of social media. And we were chatting a lot, and just her whole, like, it's a female who owns the company. She only published female authors, and at the time, just like nonfiction empowerment books. And and she had a whole great team, like the things I would need to hire out, like editor and cover design and all that stuff. They had all the people for that. They had like an editor to help with like the creative process and the technical. So they had everybody. So I thought, you know what, like, I'm just going to go with a publisher. So so
I'm going to press the easy button.
Because I had the whole manuscript done, but it was great. And so I was happy that I went with who I did. But I definitely, now that I've done it once, if I write anything again and I've got some ideas, I would definitely self-publish. It's not that bad. It's a good route.
I mean, it's been the biggest blessing in my life for me with my specific journey and story. What's the response been from women who have read the book thus far?
It's been really positive. Like, it's been really good. It just dropped. So it just came out like November 2nd. So like not a ton of people have, like, you know what I mean? It's only been a few weeks.
Yeah, it's fresh, fresh.
But like, it's been really good. And even I've had some people that aren't even going through divorce that have like picked it up, and they said like, this is like, I can relate to this. This is so cool. Like, I can relate to like dealing with these things. And like, you give so many good ideas of like what to do. And like, it's like, it's been really, the response so far has been really great. And
well, and I think that it's, you know, the tools that you're offering in the book and the suggestions for people aren't pertaining to necessarily only divorce. Any heartbreak, any like, you know, dissolution of any type of relationship, those tools come into effect. I mean, grief is like, everybody's going to go through it at one point. You know, that's not a under the divorce umbrella. Like, I mean, of course it exists when you go through a divorce, but that doesn't surprise me at all. I think it's probably very relatable to a much wider audience just than the divorce community.
Yeah. And it's so like, it's also like how, like it's called Her Awakening, because it was very much how I like woke up to like who I am, actually, not just like this feeble person that would like hide and not be like myself. And then I had all these ideas in my head from my ex of like worthlessness and things like that. And so it was like this whole like journey of like awakening to like, I'm a fucking badass woman. Like, I love myself. I accept myself no matter what is going on. And it's like this kind of like the journey. So it's like, it's relevant to anybody who's kind of on that journey of like your book, like this journey of like self-love and acceptance and discovery and being like, I deserve the world kind of thing.
If you could tell your younger self who was still in your marriage one thing, what would it be?
I would tell her that it doesn't have to be like this, and life in your future is going to be so incredibly beautiful. And I would give anybody who is struggling right now, whether they're married or kind of they just split up, whether their ex was an asshole or not, or whatever it might be, if you're just going through a hard time, like just know like the other side can be so incredible and you just have no idea what's like coming your way. I mean, since we've split up, I bought a property myself. I found a wonderful partner. I've had a baby. I've published a book. I've connected with people all over the world. So like so many insane things, like amazing things have happened. And so I would give anybody that advice. You have no idea what's coming down the pipe. I know it can be really scary. So much fear with ending something or moving into another chapter when you have no idea, but it can be so incredible.
Oh, I love that. I think it's really important for people listening to remember that life is like a roller coaster, and there will be times where you are on top of the fucking world, and there will be times when you are upside down in some crazy fucking loop being like, how the hell am I ever going to get out of this shit? And all of it's okay, and all of it's part of life. So there's always going to be that next thing that's going to bring you joy or going to bring you fulfillment or going to bring you happiness. And when we can remember that in the lower moments, it's really something to cling on to help pull you out of them.
You know what's funny? Britney Spears quote once from an interview. I still think about it. And it was before this whole conservatorship and everything happened. It was back when someone had asked her, you know, I think she was going through a bit of a tough time. And she said something like, she said the same thing, like, it's like a roller coaster. And if you were always at the top of the roller coaster and you were never down in a dip, you'd never be able to appreciate the top. Yeah. I still think about that quote. So, you know, look at her now. Hashtag free Britney. She's free.
Fucking A, man. I think that's so accurate. Like, you know, if you don't ever experience the heartbreak and the grief that comes from that, how are you ever going to really fully cherish the love? I mean, my relationship that I'm in now, I am so much more aware of how lucky I am and how much this feeling that I have for this other person, how important that is. I didn't have that in my marriage.
Oh my God, yes.
I didn't have that until I felt that devastating heartbreak and really hit rock bottom in different aspects of my life. And now I'm like, fuck, man, like I wouldn't appreciate this as much as I do now if I hadn't gone through all that.
Yeah. And it makes you so strong. Like once you get out of it, you're like, fuck, I got through that. I can get through anything.
Right? Like I'm fucking bulletproof world. Come at me, man.
And like you said, I'm kind of the same, like my current partner, like my ex-husband, like I never called him a partner. Like he was my boyfriend and then he was my husband. Like, and we didn't have a very healthy partnership. Like I did most of the things, but now that I'm like out of that and I've realized like love in a relationship as a grown-up is so much more than just like love. It's like a partnership. Like you got to get those groceries every week. You got to clean the house. You got to do this. You got to do that. And if you don't have someone at your level that can handle his shit like you can, you know, it's very challenging. And being where I was, it makes me so thankful for, same thing, like for my partnership now and for this man. And I don't think I would have ended up with someone as amazing if I hadn't gone through all that bullshit, to be honest. And if I hadn't become strong myself.
100%. Yes, 100%. So tell everybody where they can find you online, where the blog is. Re-say the name of the book, please. Give us all the things.
Sounds great. So you can find me on Instagram at the Alexandra Eva-May. And also I'm a bit on Pinterest. And then my blog is www.thesplendidpath.com. And my book, my bestseller is Her Awakening, One Woman's Journey to Healing After Divorce. Pick it up on Amazon today.
Yay. I love that so much. Congratulations for all the success and how well it's doing. I know this is only the very beginning of how many women it's going to be able to reach and heal. So welcome to that fucking author club, girl. We're happy to have you.
I'm so excited to be, for you even to be like, welcome to the club. That's cool. Thank you.
Oh, I love it so much. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy to see your happiness.
Thank you. Oh, that's so sweet.
I want to thank Alexandra so much. If you guys want to check out her book, it is on Amazon, and her online presence in her blog is really, really awesome. So I highly suggest checking that out as well. Okay, we are going to take a turn and jump into your FML stories. Here we go.
Hey, Gabrielle. My name is Darcy, and this is my FML story. I began dating my ex-husband when I was 16. We got married 9 years later, and 2 years after that, we bought our first home. 2 weeks after moving into our house, I came home early from work one day to find a woman hiding underneath of my bed. Yeah, that's how I learned about the affair my husband was having with his coworker. I went on to find out that it had been going on for about 2 years. I found hidden emails between the two of them, planning for her to come over my home as soon as I would leave for work, making overnight hotel plans, weekend trips that I thought he was spending with his friends. I also found a hidden checkbook that amounted to thousands of dollars that he had spent on her. So my mind immediately went to divorce, but this was the only relationship I ever knew, so it was terrifying to leave it. We separated for 2 months while I contemplated what to do. And during this time, his grandfather passed away, and he found out that his mother was not actually his biological mother. The grandfather we were just mourning, not his biological grandfather. It was a shit show of a time. I felt like I had to be there to support him through these awful discoveries, yet I fucking hated what he did to me in our relationship. So I also had my own Eat, Pray FML trip during this time to Puerto Rico, trying to seek peace and answers. He begged me the whole time to come back home, and he agreed to go to therapy with me. Ultimately, though, in the next 2 months that we tried salvaging our marriage, the lies and the betrayal never ended. I got the clarity that I needed, that this asshole was never going to change or treat me how I deserved. So I sold our brand new house, took our dog, and moved on with my life. I'm currently dating an amazingly caring, loving man that I actually met through my ex. Everything happens for a reason, right?
Oh my God, I love it so much. That's like out of a fucking movie to find the woman hiding under your goddamn bed. I cannot even imagine. So glad you took the fucking dog, girl. What a wild twist and turn that was to find out that his mother was not actually his mother. There's a lot of juice in that, girl. Wow. I'm so glad that you didn't get trapped back into that for too long. I can't even imagine the lies and betrayal and the amount of deception it takes to have an affair for that long, and why you would even go out and get married if it was happening before the marriage. It makes no sense to me. I'm so glad that you have found your happily ever after, and you're damn straight everything happens for a fucking reason. Okay, here is story number 2.
Hey Gabrielle, I'm Lindsay, 34-year-old registered dental hygienist here in the state of Florida in a small town called Merritt Island, where the space shuttle is. I'm here to tell you my FML story. So I met my husband Brian in November of 2007, and we're both from here, small town, big families. We've been here for a long time. He is 7.5 years older than me, so I didn't meet him until I was older, 20. So I meet him, everything starts to happen quickly. He's that big, strong, 6'5", confident guy, speaks with conviction. Everyone knows him, life of the party, So everything happens quickly, classic narcissism. I didn't know about that until now. It started up here and just kept going down. Anyway, so meet him. He asked me to move in with him about 3.5, 4 months into dating each other. I'm just this young, naive girl who's head over heels because no one's ever treated her this way before. We conceived our daughter March of that year, which is like 4 months into knowing each other, because he wanted to have a baby. He was so family oriented. He was a school teacher. So we conceived our daughter and birth her 1 year later after knowing each other. Best thing I've ever done, but still crazy. So anyway, Brian, I found out he cheated on me when Paisley was about 1. It was what I thought was an isolated incident. He writes me this apology letter. He's so sorry. I take him back. Yes, I know, sounds stupid. I believe everybody deserves a second chance, and you fight for what you love, and that's what I loved. And I was 21 with a daughter. So his apology seemed genuine. I took him back. We were working on things. It seemed like things were getting better and better and better. He proposed to me when Paisley was about 5 years old. 5 years later, asked to have another kid. We conceived. We just had this dream of a life, right? Like making good money, both of us, building our dream house. A dream, literally a dream of a life. Like everyone. Anyways, long story short, I got a phone call from a girl that we fish with in the Bahamas every summer. Her family, her dad and my ex-husband are like, they were like the best of friends. Those people were like grandparents to my children. They're like a second family. She called to tell me that her and Brian have been screwing the past 5 years, basically since the conception and birth of my son. She wanted to let me know that she wasn't the only one, that he's screwing my cousin, who sits next to me in church every day, Sunday, and another girl who was a friend of ours, that she's been screwing him every single Bahamas trip they go on, even the ones that my children and I are there on in the next room. So as this has all now come out, it's been a year since I found everything out, and I don't even think I've ever had time to process it, but the layers of the onion just keep unraveling and unraveling, and it is insane to me that there are so many other women who experience things like this, and researching narcissistic sociopath and knowing that there's a diagnosis just helps so much. What you're doing is amazing, and hearing your stories and other people's stories. I didn't even know that I knew about narcissism, people have heard that, but until you're with that, like, holy shit. My story's nuts. Could go on for hours about this. It just branches out into so many web of lies. It's like, I mean, our friends are like, holy crap, you guys are together all the time. Like, when, you know? It's nuts. My lawyer's like, write a freaking book, dude. This is insane. So anyways, I'd love to share more of my story. I'm thankful for you and all that you're doing, and I really appreciate you listening. So I hope we can chat soon.
Oh my God, girl. Damn, the 5 years Bahama screw, and then the cousin. I mean, fuck, man. That's deep sociopathic shit. And I think that's a really good point you brought up when you said, God, you guys are together all the time. How does he even have time to do that? That's how I felt about my ex-husband and I. And it was very convenient work-related stuff that he would make up these extravagant lies to be able to go and have this affair. So it happens all the time. You are not fucking alone. And I am so glad that this show has taught you more about narcissism and what to look out for. You were so young when you got into that relationship, and I am so glad that you are now out of it and free from it. And thank God you have those two beautiful little kids. So it was all worth it in a sense. Next week, you guys, it is officially time. It is everyone's favorite episode of the season. We are doing season 3 episode of All the Fucking Questions, where you guys have submitted questions on our Instagram pages. And Jackie and I are going to sit down and answer them one by one blind. It always turns out being a fucking riot of an episode. So make sure you bring a fun cocktail to next week's episode. As always, make sure you are subscribed so you never miss an episode. Keep up with us on Instagram at FML Talk Podcast. If you are needing more bonus content, you can get 3 seasons on the Patreon subscription. That's patreon.com/FMLTalk. You can watch us on YouTube now at youtube.com/FMLTalk. And as always, I will see you guys next Wednesday. Cheers.